Okay, welcome everybody to our event. Wait, let me share my screen first. Um,
Hello, everyone.
Hey guys.
View slideshow. Okay, welcome everybody to AMA New Orleans. First, let me start the chat. To should agencies migrate from WordPress? So let me first. All right, sorry, folks. Ah, can you see this?
I think we just lost it
Not
a
yet.
second and then yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, before we get started, if you have any questions for our panelists, use the Q&A box in Zoom. Type them in. We'll answer them after we're done with the panel. Also, this webinar is being recorded. We'll post it tomorrow to our YouTube channel. So if you registered through Eventbrite, you'll get a link to it from Eventbrite. So don't worry about trying to record it on your computer. You can if you want to. Okay, what is the purpose of this webinar? We are trying to predict where agencies are going to be in the next 5 to 10 years for web development, for building client sites. We're going to try to find if it even makes sense for agencies to stick with WordPress, if there are better options available, and also try to find out where they're going, whether they go the low or no code route like Webflow or Framer or Headless or enterprise level. Meet our panel. So thank you so much to Tucker and Daniel and Nick for joining us. These are the three that I wanted in all of Louisiana. I don't think you could find three more qualified people
Don't
for this
stop it.
talk. No, seriously. And we are AMA New Orleans, but we did have to go all the way to Baton Rouge to. We went all over Louisiana to find the best, and we got them. So we're very happy. And now we begin. All right, so the first one is for Nick. So 368 was WordPress based, but you switched over to Webflow. What made you leave WordPress and what made you choose Webflow? Let
Mhm.
me.
First of all, thanks for having us, and what a strong start for a WordPress webinar to talk about moving over. What I'd like to say is we haven't totally moved over, but WordPress, the way I like to say it, it's kind of like my high school sweetheart. It's my first love. We're still friends. We had a long-term relationship, and Webflow right now is our new interest. We haven't totally left WordPress, but we do have a new love in our lives. What's very interesting is the switch moment that really happened for me was when we made a key hire. Timothy Ricks, I don't know if you know him, but he won Webflow Educator of the Year. And I do remember the moment the switch happened in my mind. We He took a complicated homepage that we built internally. It took us about a week to build. He did it overnight in Webflow and showed it to me the next day, and it was working perfectly. And it really just, to me, it unlocked how much time we can save and how much more we can focus on interactions, experiences, storytelling, the things that we love by switching over to a different CMS. Also, the user experience was really nice in content editing. It's more on the visual side. You can actually see and edit on the visual side. So we're still platform agnostic. We still use WordPress for a lot of complicated integrations or lots of pages. But Webflow is our preference. I'd say we went from almost 100% WordPress maybe 2 years ago to 80% Webflow now, maybe 20%, maybe 10% WordPress and 10% other headless CMSs, things like that. So Recently got a lot into Webflow Enterprise, which opened up a lot more complicated websites to be built into Webflow. So yeah, that's our current path. We got a question here in the chat. Do you want me to answer it now
Yeah,
or
it's
keep
I saw
moving?
somebody asked about the panelists' expertise and backgrounds, and that's your host's fault. Do y'all want to go around and give a quick brief intro to yourself and your companies?
Sure. I'm Nick Defelice, co-founder and COO now of 368. We're a marketing agency in Baton Rouge. I've been doing uh, digital website experiences for probably 15 years. Um, Baton Rouge represent. Daniel.
So I'm Daniel Kedinger. I'm the Director of Creative and Digital Services at Mesh. I've been working with WordPress since before I think it was considered a CMS and it was a blog, but I've had my hand in quite a few different CMSs over the years. So I oversee our creative and digital teams at Mesh and work a lot more on high-level client strategy and planning, but kind of looking out and making sure we choose the right solution for the right client. And we're here in Baton Rouge as well. I'm from Lafayette, so I'll say represent for both of those cities.
I'm Tucker Roussel. I'm the technology director over at Gatorworks, digital marketing agency here in Baton Rouge. Been working with websites probably for about 13 years now, and kind of did get an early start in WordPress specifically, and run our team of developers over here. And yeah, I mean, we're all in on it. So excited to be here. Thanks to AMA for having us.
Oh, thank y'all for being here. And guys, I will come clean. Usually we have Sharik, our board president, doing the webinars, and she is very professional, very like Miss Hostess. I am just a WordPress dev, definitely not a professional presenter. So if I do lean on our panelists to kind of carry it along, apologies. But all right, so we did get with Nick's first question. Oh, also, I did put the slides in the chat. The second one is for Tucker. Okay, so Tucker, Gatorworks is on WordPress and has been for a while. What keeps y'all on WordPress? Is there anything that concerns you about WordPress that would make you consider moving?
Yeah, three big things for us, I think, related to WordPress are the flexibility, the portability, and the efficiency of it. Those are kind of my three buzzwords for the question. We found a lot of efficiency in the fact that, and flexibility in the fact that WordPress can work for just about any client out there, anything from the mom and pop shop all the way up to enterprise and anything in between when done properly. So that's really big for us. It's flexible for our development team. We build the sites from the ground up using WordPress to manage the content. We can rely on third-party software, third-party plugins that are well vetted and well used. But the flexibility for our dev team is big. The portability, we can start working with a client from day one when they're already on WordPress, and we don't have to go through the hurdles of non-standard CMSs or trying to rebuild a site before you can get started with marketing efforts. So that's really big for us. And our clients take comfort in the fact that, they're not going to be left with some random defunct CMS that somebody told them to use a couple years back, and now they're kind of out on an island with it. So that's big too. And then just the efficiency. We now have an entire agency of specialists that are power users of WordPress and use it every day. And so we just can get started that much quicker, making our clients' websites run better, make them run faster, and convert better for their user base. And Gatorworks isn't exclusively WordPress either. We work in Shopify, we work in Webflow too. We kind of dabble in a bunch of those CMSs out there. But we've just found that WordPress covers such a broad range of projects.
And also, I see somebody has their hand raised. Mark, if you do have a question, and he may have put something in Q&A, but if you have a question, put it in the Q&A box, and our panelists can answer it. But just I don't know if we're doing the raise hand feature, but yeah, we are doing Q&A. Okay, so finally, Daniel. So Mesh describes itself as platform agnostic. So it's predominantly WordPress, but you choose the platform that best fits your client's needs. So how do you determine which platform is best? And are there any strengths or weaknesses for different web platforms?
Yeah, I think just like the rest of the guys said, like platform agnostic, I think is, in the agency world, we tend to want to try and adapt to our clients as best we can. But I think a lot of times if somebody comes in with a very strong opinion about a CMS, sometimes they come to us and say, we are looking for a WordPress site. So, we're well set up to handle those types of sites. It's kind of our CMS of first choice. But there are some times where it doesn't always make sense. So if somebody says we want WordPress, we usually ask the question, why? Like, what is it about that made you? And sometimes it's just like, well, that's what we've heard of. Somebody told us, my, nephew's brother said we really should be on WordPress. So we try to probe a little bit. And if a lot of times clients think they need a CMS and because they want to get in and they say they're going to manage a lot of things, but that tends to not always be the case. So sometimes if a client really doesn't want to get in and make a lot of changes on a site, we may pick a different CMS based on their need. We find a lot of times Webflow gives us a lot of flexibility on the design side and can do some really amazing interactions and animations. So if something's going to lean heavier on a design or an interaction basis, we may choose that CMS. And then I'm not going to say, sometimes it may be something more simple like a Squarespace site. It may be, something even that's more friendly to someone depending on their need. But usually what makes the call a lot of times is integrations and what does it need to plug into, or what's their workflow. We'll have more on that side. I think the biggest strength and weakness plays into a lot of times their internal teams, unless they do expect us, or from the get-go they want us to be more of a digital agency of record. In those situations, those are different than if we're handing a site over to an internal team to keep, managed or running. But we've worked on Drupal sites. We've worked on, talking about just about every CMS I've touched at some point or another. The toughest thing is when someone asks us to do something that we've never worked on before. That's usually when we say, that's probably not a good decision for us. We can either partner with someone if it's a requirement, but it usually comes down to how detailed is their editing experience going to be. And that usually will make a call for us on where we land. But even some sites that we may perceive are less editing time, there's still always workarounds, I feel like, where you can say, yeah, you want to do a lot of editing all the time. Well, maybe Webflow or maybe Shopify or maybe something else, depending on your needs, going to fit in there. But we do lean WordPress a lot because of efficiencies that we've built over the years. And we know the platform. Our whole team knows how to get in and manage those types of things. Oh,
Okay.
sorry, guys. So I'll speak up a little bit louder. A couple people making some comments about low volume. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to ask the chat if they had issues. I can hear you loud and clear, Daniel, but no, it's like it might just be, yeah, speaking louder will be great.
Sure. I can
Okay.
definitely make sure to do that.
All right. So let's start with the first question for the panel. And actually let me share so the viewers can see this one. Okay, it's a two-parter. How important is open source or owning your digital assets when choosing a platform? And what about owning your data? And it's really knowing who has access to that data, who has ownership of it. How does that come into play when picking a platform for a client site?
Was gonna say, I'll jump in first if you guys want. I think one
Go
of the
for
things
it.
I always say is like the CMSs that you can't get your data out of, those are the most run away from type CMSs, I always say to people, because if someone doesn't let you in your own content or get it out in some, even if it's Excel or get it out as a static site, even, that's the ones that you really need to they're purposeful to keep you from leaving. So that's one of the things I like about a lot of the CMSs we work with, is that the data at least is portable. I don't think other than building your own CMS, owning it is a little bit harder to, you know, you're not really owning the platform regardless of a lot of these open source unless you are committing back to the code. But make sure your data can come out, like your content is accessible, it's portable, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say open source has a lot of value. It pushes innovation forward for development tools, and that kind of what excites me the most. But as far as deciding what CMS to use, most of our clients, it's just one factor. Rarely it's the deciding factor or even brought up in conversation. Really, what they want to know is about security. Is my site going to be secure? Is it, what's the response time if things go down? What's the guarantee? And so to me, most of the managed hosting, WordPress, WP Engine, Webflow, those things are the solution. And open source is rarely a question I've had actually with a client as far as what choice to make for the CMS. So yeah, I love open source, but it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah, I agree with both those points. Kind of the biggest thing is just making sure that your information in those systems is yours and you can take it where you need it. We've definitely seen clients get burned by these proprietary systems out there that you can't move anything, you can't export your data, your site is not yours, and even though you might have paid a pretty penny for it. So it's definitely the open source nature of WordPress is a big player in that concept of ownership, but absolutely most mature CMSs will kind of give you the ability to have your own data and take it with you where you need to go.
I think the only thing I say is like worth the idea of open source and owning it is more when there's a function or a feature that a platform doesn't have. It is nice with open source that you can come up with something custom or add something. That's probably one of my biggest, if I had to give a beef to Webflow, it's one of the like, there are certain times where I'm like, man, if that was just a little bit different, that would be perfect for this situation. That's usually the only time that I start to say bolting on to open source is helpful in that way. But again, you're bolting on, so you got to make sure your house is still stable. You're not building something that um, can't be pushed and just fall apart. So hosting, security, all those types of things start to play into it as well.
All right, so keeping on this, so Tucker and Daniel, y'all have been on WordPress for a while. Just the idea of open sources, WordPress, I thought used to be a lot more community driven than it is today. And the example I'm going to give is them forcing Gutenberg into core. A lot of people didn't want it. This was in 2018. For those who are newer to WordPress, Gutenberg's the new JavaScript-based block editor. The community didn't want it. The Gutenberg plugin had a rash of one-star reviews, but because Automattic thought that that's what it needs to push this forward and make things better for .com at even at the expense of .org. Do you think WordPress really has become more so the Automatic show than community? And do you think that's bad for both marketing companies and users moving forward? Because a lot of us had to redo our businesses after Gutenberg became part of core. You couldn't build sites the same way.
I don't think so. I don't think it's purely the automatic show. I mean, I was watching some of the state of the word that was just the other week, and I think there were like something in the over 900 contributors to the most recent release of WordPress, and I don't know the percentage of those from automatic, but I think there's still a very healthy and full community involvement there. Speaking about Gutenberg specifically, I mean, we use that on every single one of our client sites. And so when it's done properly, when you build on top of it the correct way, I think it's an incredible tool. And so I think that just speaks to kind of WordPress as a whole. You can build a very poor WordPress site but you can also build one that does exactly what you need it to do and does it very well and reliably. So now I'm excited about the community involvement. It's one of the things I'm kind of looking at here, and that's a different type of development, building, websites as an agency and then contributing to something like WordPress at that scale. But no, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I will say I think like the recent shift of Automattic and just seeing how something that I always perceived as being community driven could be affected by one individual did cause a lot of pause because, I had always thought about it as like a lot of people are contributing, somebody's checking it, like there's a lot of hands in the pot, but that's good because, you get usually when there's more people looking, a product is going to have some better QA or checking or things like that. So I think that's been something WordPress has done really well. You can't appease everybody, right? Like there's just not going to be the case. We were trying to build Gutenberg basically as a team with ACF and these things way before Gutenberg came out. So we kind of welcomed it because I think it gave us an opportunity to do stuff slowly native. I mean, it's taken a long time, in my opinion, to get where it is now, where you actually feel pretty confident about it. But it was when I started to realize, wait, there's a lot more control by a more of a singular involvement outside of the code base of it. That is when it did start to give like, okay, well, it opened my eyes to a different perspective about open source in general.
Yeah, and it was conflicting opinions, right? Everybody was saying, "Oh, WordPress is a stale CMS," but then having not being happy with them moving forward into the block-based editor. So maybe there were some wrinkles along the way, but I think it's for the better there.
And last one before we move on. Nick, so y'all use Webflow. Is there any concern about sites, client sites that may have proprietary information passed through the site that you're hosted on Webflow? You have to go, pretty much have to host through them if you want access to the editor. Is there any concern over who's able to access any sensitive data that passes through the site?
Yeah, Webflow security is amazing, and their team is very flexible and open on their procedures and allow you to run your own pen tests and security. Um, when we do marketing, when we do websites on Webflow, they're normally marketing sites, and we don't necessarily recommend you put all your sensitive data into your marketing site. So if you do need that, Webflow has an option to download an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript export of your site and host it on your on premise. So we do have some like enterprise clients who have a workflow whenever they publish a Webflow site that it automatically just uploads it to their AWS, their Google Cloud, or whatever service they have. So it's not much of a concern, honestly. The We have so much trust in Webflow and their team. They have plenty more experts than we have on our team to make sure that the security is top notch, and we haven't had a problem with that.
Yeah, I would add to that though the idea of like self-hosting. It tends to be where our recommendation is not to go that route because I feel like people that think, oh well, if I'm going to self-host it, I'm more secure, I have more control. I think, it can be a little bit hubris sometimes because the reality of a managed host is that you've got staff, you've got, a lot more compliance sometimes that goes into those things. I've seen, especially in the enterprise, there tends to be a lot of educational groups that are like, I'm going to host it on-prem. That's going to give me more control. And I think you start to get in a dangerous area when you say, I can do what these hundreds of other people that are keeping eyes on these servers are doing. So I think that's the allure of open source in self-hosting, but you gain other responsibilities that you may not be prepared for.
Yeah, most IT teams that we work with are glad to hand off the security and worry about the marketing website to someone else who's an expert in looking at it. So we find that really works out best.
I agree, guys. So moving on to the next question, and this kind of dovetails into the next one. Have the actions of Automattic's leadership, specifically CEO Matt Mullenweg, caused you to question WordPress as a long-term web solution?
Daniel touched on it a little bit. I mean, in short, I think the answer is no. There were some concerning things that happened, along the way there, but in terms of the longevity of WordPress, no concerns there. WP Engine did a study back in, I think it was 2020 or 2021, about like the global economy of WordPress, all the business that flows in and around WordPress as an ecosystem. And it was something like $600 billion back in 2021. Don't know what the current numbers are, but that's just not going to fizzle away because of a little, feud here and there. I think WordPress has a lot going for it, and again, a massive community around it.
Yeah, to me, it just seemed like sort of a disappointment attack. I kind of understand the background, but it made a little bit of our clients worry and clients ask us. But I think that's almost the news cycle in the past. People have forgotten about it, and I don't see it having much of effect in the future.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion too, the only thing it was concerning is when, there started to be some interruption of the ability to do updates and things. And it didn't happen long, but it was one of those that I think it woke up a lot of people in the community. And one of the things that I think was good for me to see is how quickly people were like, this is how I will adapt, or, a lot of um innovative thinking came up when people said, hold on, wait, I need to make sure I'm not just trusting this organization. So it did cause me a little bit of pause in that, but at the same time, it also showed me how strong the community is to make sure they are defending WordPress in that growth or those changes or those things. So I think the might of the community, and when you talk about something like 43 what percent of the world's websites run on it, you can't just wipe all that those people away. There's a certain weight that comes with that group, and I think that is what gives a lot of staying power. But realistically, all the forks of WordPress that have popped up, none of those have really had the power to say I'm going to re-platform for something like that. I think, I would see re-platforming on another CMS than trying to stick with one of these other kind of options that are out there.
Yeah, and somebody said it in the chat how quickly WP Engine was able to find a solution, which is they cloned the .org repository, and that's where you upload updates from. The most disappointing part of it to me actually wasn't kind of centered around WP Engine. It was basically the takeover of the advanced custom fields plugin repository for .org, because they
Yeah,
real
such confusion.
yeah, and I really think Automattic acted in bad faith there. They cited that, well, ACF didn't patch a disclosed security vulnerability, a CVE, quickly enough. But one, they locked everybody out of their they locked WP Engine out of the .org repository, so they couldn't uh, upload the amended file. They also made every user whenever they signed into .org check a box that said they weren't affiliated with WP Engine. But the hostile takeover of advanced custom fields plugin and then repurposing it secure custom fields did not sit well to me. And some of the actions of Matt, I'm in a developers group that's not WordPress related, and even they heard about this, that they didn't really know about Automattic, or that Automattic is the for-profit arm of WordPress, but there's some crazy guy causing all kinds of chaos in the WordPress world, and that they asked me about it.
Yeah, I will agree. That was the one that probably gave us the most like, whoa, that's a big step. But I think it, even in the media and how it was covered, it felt like it was one of those like, oh, wait, okay, everybody, let's calm down now. Like I think it kind of cooled down a lot of, because it felt like a very uh, big swing and a quick step that nobody expected. But I do think it was at that point where everybody said, okay, hold on, what are we actually, it made people consider their choices, consider plugins, think about those kinds of things, especially when we build our livelihoods on these, these choices, these plugins. But I think governance of the plugins feels like it should not be something controlled by that level. I mean, if somebody's invested their lives in a plugin that they've sold and they've worked on, I think we shouldn't, you know, prevent other people from having access to those things or even taking over their software.
Agreed. But it seems like the panel is not too concerned, at least in the long term, that it's too big for, even Automattic to bring down, which is good. The community is what I think really keeps it going. It's good for me to hear. Okay, so for the next question, let me share. Okay. So around SEO, WordPress has pretty much been the go-to for SEOs. Is that because of SEO advantages in WordPress? Any specific innate advantages, or can you achieve similar or better results somewhere else?
I'll jump in. Again, kind of just a mature CMS conversation. Like most of the mature CMSs out there, you're going to be able to influence the key components of search optimization. Definitely seen some less common ones out there that are an absolute nightmare, if not impossible, to do some of those common tasks for SEO. I think the advantages you get around WordPress are like obviously again around the ecosystem of plugins um, that can really take those things and make them efficient over a bigger group of projects. And then I think in a different way, this one really just comes down to like for us, just the efficiency of the agency working in and around those services. When you can deal with a bigger batch of sites and learn the common practices of how to, move those levers on a site and do the things you need to do for these different marketing services, you get a lot of that efficiency out of a system like WordPress. So that's really where it shines for us.
Yeah, I think WordPress is the OG, right? Content is well, king in SEO, and WordPress started out as a blog editor, and it just made it easy to get good at SEO. In today's tools, I think every CMS is probably on par. Even on the Webflow side, they add a lot of AI SEO features, like AI automatically generates schema for a page with the click of a button. It's really, really nice. AI alt tags and things like that. So, yeah, I think, WordPress is not going to win at page speed compared to like probably React or straight HTML, but it does give you a lot of SEO features and ability to generate a lot of content. So,
Yeah, I would agree with you guys. I feel like when WordPress started, it was so easy. And then, the Yoast plugin, like Yoast and all that, like when he started really developing and growing that plugin, it became much easier for a lot of people to do it. So I don't even know if it was necessarily core WordPress that made it that easy. Um, I found when I first got into Webflow, there was some things that were harder to do. You couldn't kind of get under the hood, but Webflow's done a lot in the last, probably 4 years to catch up with that. We kind of always tell our clients one of the things we think about is what's good for humans is good for SEO. So it's like I think now where the CMSs compete for SEO is on load time and accessibility and some of these things that have less to do with, your does the CMS support SEO at a base level? It's like how fast does it load? How, what kinds of things can push the needle, because we're all trying to turn as much juice out of these search engines as possible nowadays. I think they all support it, but then some, like Webflow speed can be amazing on that platform, because it does control a lot and handles it. So we've seen impact from that. That little bit of impact can go a long way when you're trying to compete against everybody.
Nick, did you notice any traffic declines or increases when y'all went from more WordPress to Webflow based?
Not particularly based on just the CMS framework. No, honestly, maybe less spam, uh, less targets to certain known what like WordPress paths and stuff like that. So, yeah, say that.
Daniel, do you notice any traffic differences between platforms, or if SEO is really a priority for a client, what is your go-to?
I mean, we tend to, if I would say just in the complexity of content, we tend to, on those types of sites, lean to WordPress because it's a little bit easier to manage really large, deep kind of sites. They bring their own SEO complexities with, how you deal with page crawl depths and these types of things. But I think they make it a little bit easier on that side. But I find more issue replatforming affecting SEO than investing in your own site to continue growing it. It's like switching from one to another probably has more impact on you in general, just because you've messed with the algorithm and you've told Google, we just changed something big. That usually has more of an impact than the platform itself in our experience. But when you get into super deep sites, we tend to lean to WordPress to kind of optimize and push those things a little bit. But like I said, if we have a smaller site and we really want to prioritize speed, we tend to lean on Webflow for that.
Yeah, and again, in the agency space, right? Like you start getting into the details of WordPress and what the ecosystem of plugins has to offer. How, if you need to manage different content types on your site differently, how easy is it to go do that and manage its search appearance? If you need to take bulk actions across your entire site for different, different metadata, if generating schema, like all those kinds of things, you see, I think you see some more tools within WordPress.
Right. Good to know. All right, so for the next one, this was inspired by a security engineer that he's in the chat right now. He's on the webinar, Cliff Barbier, about security. So security has all dogged WordPress basically since the beginning. One, are those security concerns overblown? Two, have security concerns, fair or unfair, caused you to choose another platform over WordPress?
I'll jump in
Yeah,
on this one. I'll say,
go ahead.
like, I always say with great power comes great responsibility, to steal a
That's
line.
what I
And
was gonna say.
yeah, I feel like WordPress is, you may have the power, but you're going to have the responsibility to keep it up, and that we always recommend managed WordPress hosting for that reason of like, what's your plan for updates? How do you handle, because with any software, whether it's internal in our agency or it's on a website, like patching is important. And if you're not on top of it, then it's going to be a problem. And I think, and look, not to lay too much love on WP Engine because we've used other hosting platforms. What they did with Smart Plugin Manager and some of the features of that have like changed the game, because it has put a lot of that stuff on where you don't have to stress to stay on top of it and do, you can't ever just, any website you have, I tell people security is more about the user login and some of these other things, but the plugins, keeping them up, are important. But if you're using a managed host, that should be your key value, right? Is that they're going to keep an eye on plugin updates and things like that.
Yeah, exactly what Daniel said. Security hasn't pushed us away from WordPress. I've been through a couple days where I've woken up to I literally had one of our websites had a someone pointing a gun directly at the screen and got hacked. And those are the days of shared hosting. And moving over to managed hosting has just been such a relief. And these are the experts, and I feel pretty confident in their level of security and their protection. So yeah, WordPress on WP Engine and Webflow and their managed hosting definitely lets me sleep at night. So, but yeah, never pushed away from WordPress. I think the overall, just the amount of percent of the market that WordPress has, they're going to be open for vulnerability. So like, there's no like security by obscurity here. It's like something's going to happen potentially. But most of the time, it's yeah, like Daniel said, user logins, user has bad passwords, things like that. That usually, or they forget to update their site, and there's an old plugin with a known vulnerability. Those are most of the cases, but managed hosting solves most of those. So
I would add one other thing too is with WordPress, and this is something we get into a lot of discussions with clients about, is how you choose what you add to WordPress makes a big difference because yes, there are 30,000 plus plugins or more than that, but plugins to do anything you want, but using a vetted plugin that's been around, that's trusted, that's free plugins are, we usually say like that's where you get in trouble is it supported? Is it regularly updated? So I mean, we try to use as little plugins as possible in general because you're going to limit your vectors for attack and those types of things. But I think that's where a lot of people where WordPress has gotten such a bad name is I think a lot of people, when they build their website, they're like, let me just go grab whatever plugin I needed off the shelf to do it. And then invariably, those plugins are the ones that have the biggest vulnerabilities because they don't have a team keeping it updated. So I think I would say the plugins have more risk in my experience than the actual core WordPress. I've seen more hacks because a plugin didn't get updated that, is 5, 6, 7 years old. Now, yes, if somebody hasn't updated their WordPress version in a while, I think that is going to be a risk anyway. But the plugins are the biggest vector we see. So we stick with what we know and we can trust, but also if it is something that we're going to go outside of the ones that we work with often, we're going to vet it, we're going to test it, we're going to look when was the last time a release was pushed out, how often was it updated, before we just say yes, let's throw that on a website.
Yeah, there's the security concerns that we say like they're not overblown, but in many cases they're misapplied. Like Daniel just said, like WordPress itself isn't insecure. A lot of times it comes from those add-on pieces. We throw out the analogy of like your website being like a house. WordPress and your website, the entirety of it is contained within the house. If your house is in a really bad neighborhood or like a bad host, that's going to be a security risk. If you never lock your front door and you never set your alarm, that's a security risk. So like those are the more common areas of vulnerabilities. It's not WordPress itself or alone.
Yeah, I second Daniel and I think Tucker on the minimize plugin use as much as you can and be very judicious in which plugins you do use. Because in that cybersecurity meetup Cliff and I are a part of, I've talked to penetration testers and tried to pick their brain like, all right, if you had to hack a WordPress site, what would you do? And it's just WordPress is going to show all the plugins that are currently running on the site. You go look in each one, look at the change logs and what files were edited because they have to put that in the change logs and just see where can I find vulnerabilities there. So uh, when I see, Elementor sites with 10 zillion Elementor add-ons on them, uh, it's a security nightmare. One more because Cliff, going back to this discussion, does WordPress give a little too much power to a plugin that's either been compromised or it's gone rogue, where if you upload a gallery plugin to WordPress and that plugin is able to add administrators to your site, is that a plugin issue? Is that a WordPress core issue for not having better checks on what privileges a particular plugin can have? Or is that just something that you take the good with the bad when it comes to WordPress? It's powerful, it gives a lot, you can do a lot with it, but then, like Daniel said, with great power comes great responsibility.
Man,
Well,
that's a
building
tough
on
question.
Tucker's house analogy, I think it's like, you can have a really bad heater in your house that has a fire risk, right? And like a recall comes out and you don't know anything about it. Like, so I think there is that idea of like, if you're not on top of plugin up, if it's a plugin that you're using and you're not on top of its release notes or any of those kinds of things, you're trusting somebody else. So I think it's tough though. You get into what I would almost say is like the Apple versus Google argument, where yes, you control everything and you limit access, but then you limit flexibility. So it's kind of, and look, I'm an all Apple guy. Like you'll see it all around, but I think if WordPress did more to limit it, then you wouldn't have as much flexibility and ability to grow and build on the platform. Our plugins come in and solve a need that we've all been complaining about for the last four versions of core. So I think that there's a good thing that comes from plugins being able to have access and do those things. Like I say ACF as an example, like it has been one of those plugins that has truly changed the industry and what you can do with WordPress. But there's other ones out there that do the same thing. So, but if they had all been limited, I think I would have said my career would have probably been different because it would have been a different type of flexibility that it gave us that we wouldn't have had if that plugin or some of the other ones hadn't been around.
Yeah, to me, I think it's totally worth it to start adding restrictions. Just loses the biggest sales driver for me for WordPress is that the flexibility is there to pretty much do anything you want, and I never run across a problem where I couldn't use it. So I'd say, consider ways to protect yourself with different levels of users, backups, and those kind of things. So yeah, I probably wouldn't trade it.
Yeah, and managed hosts can step up in a big way there. Most do, obviously, and you know, maybe here in the near future we'll get some more um, like security practices from the WordPress plugin repository, things like that, that can maybe flag some of those vulnerabilities differently for website owners. But yeah, I'm with these guys. There's, it doesn't make sense to start restricting things in a major way.
Okay, great. So moving on to the next one, and I know we have a lot of Q&As, so we'll try to go on quick, but we don't have too many. More. Okay. Next one. Okay, the editing experience. Do your clients like editing in WordPress? Do they find other platforms easier to use? And do they like the front end builders better than the classic WYSIWYG editors?
Go
So
ahead.
this is where I may get a little divisive, I guess, because I feel like one of the decisions that drives Webflow versus WordPress for us a little bit has been the editing experience. Because if I think you can definitely get in and edit things, like a client can get in and edit in Webflow, I believe, pretty well. But if they really want flexibility with moving things around, adjusting the flow of the page or changing things up, it does require another level of their control and ability. What we've seen over the years is there is that like, and again, it's the client, certain levels of client skill, but I have found The one that doesn't want to touch most loves the editing experience of Webflow. They want to go click a word, change it, drop an image in, and then bounce out of the site, and they're happy about that. But the client that wants more flexibility and says, hey, at some point I might need to remove this block, add another one in, adjust or change a thing, they have loved the experience of WordPress. What we have usually found is when someone comes to us and says, I hate the WordPress editor, I usually ask the question of, what were you using on your previous version of WordPress? And 9 times out of 10, they were on an extremely old version. So they weren't using something and it was a bad version of WordPress UI, or they were using some block builder that was just really not configured well or set up for them. But when the biggest joke or the biggest compliment I've loved is when someone said our back end looked as good as our front end. And I said, well, I could take that in a dirty way, but I'll take that as a compliment, because I think that makes, that means something to certain people. But if you're looking for that easy editing, I always say getting in and editing in place is a win.
Yeah, for our clients, the more visual you can be, the better they find. So Webflow has its visual editor, and they seem to like that. It doesn't offer as much flexibility as moving things around, but we do have a component-based way we build them that allows some flexibility. But any little bit of complexity we add, the more challenging it is. And in WordPress with Gutenberg, we try to stick to make sure every little Gutenberg has its own visual component so they can see. And we try to make the back end, like Daniel said, as close to the front as we can, trying to duplicate the CSS in the front and the back end. So the experience is as visual and flexible as it can be. I've never had a client that just loved Elementor or these crazy block builders and have able to have any success with that. It's mostly definitely a challenge. So we try to stick to closely as visual editing as possible. And clients love duplication. So if they can duplicate a page and change the content, that's a win. So we try to add that feature into every CMS.
Yeah, the block editor's been been great for us too, and we're all in on it. Like you're saying, you get things like reusable blocks and patterns that clients can use those things on any page they need as their marketing needs change and their business needs change as well. They don't have to go back to the drawing board every single time. There's a lot of reusability there. Obviously, I think it's a big improvement over Classic, of course. I think I saw a comment in the chat. I think again, when done right, the block editor, Gutenberg, compared to some of those other ones out there like Elementor, it allows us as an agency to be flexible with the content and the layouts while also being restrictive with the design systems so that clients aren't going in there and making a heading that's bright blue when that's nowhere in their brand colors and things like that. So a lot of advantages with that new editor in WordPress, and we've been taking full advantage.
Yeah, Tucker, I think you just said a big thing that was a changing point for us a lot is the idea of like, we try to tell our clients we're setting up a design system for you, not just you go in and build the site. And I think that is the one place I do feel like WordPress.com versus the open source has kind of led to a little bit of division is the full site editing experience of WordPress. It's like if you really did want to get in and build a site yourself, I think it's a route you could take. But if you come to an agency, most of the time it's because you want someone to curate a look and a feel and not lock you in, but give you to not have to think about what should this look like every time I go to build it. So I think that is a big thing we say is a value is when you have a design system, you pick the right thing and you have control, but you're not we're holding your hand a little bit more than if you were just wide open, do whatever you want. So I do think that plays into the editing experience. But I do see the challenge of some CMSs as you get more into these headless CMSs where you're not as much seeing what you're doing. You're just putting stuff in a little box and then hoping it looks good. So I think there is you see this shift, and I think people are not comfortable with it. They still want to see a visual editor as they're kind of working with their content.
Right. Last question for the panel, and I'll just read it off. Are there any accessibility concerns that make you choose one platform over another? And is there any concern on proprietary CMSs where not everything can be customized or even edited?
I don't have any accessibility concerns on the CMS side. Mostly comes to implementation, really not the platform. We've actually built an internal framework. Tim Ricks built a framework called Lumos, which is a basically starter theme for Webflow with accessibility fully baked in. So you go to your settings and turn off your animation. Every single animation you have on the site stops. It works on zooming up to 200% with flexible font sizes. So um, the accessibility is really about more about the implementation than the CMS, and uh, we've kind of built that into our starter themes because it's important for us.
I will say I do feel like Webflow has done a much better job over the last couple of years integrating in accessibility. I feel like their take on it has been really good recently, like the audit panel and how they kind of walk you through. I do feel like that is a good improvement I saw from the CMS side. In WordPress, I do feel like they're leaving you a little bit like on your own when you build the site. So there is more risk in that. We've used some plugins that we like that's more about warning you when you made a wrong choice. We've built into the implementation and the design system, that if you do something and you choose the wrong color and it's not good contrast, we're going to flag it for you. And then a plugin is going to tell you, hey, you really shouldn't do that. It's not going to force it and fix it. It's going to try and keep you on the straight and narrow. So I think that is a place where WordPress hasn't had that at a native level, but there's been some good options on that. But I do like where Webflow has gone. They've shown a lot of like investment in it. So I think new people coming on, if they're not on a framework like you guys have, which I think is great, they still have done a good job of building that in.
Yeah, the sort
Yeah.
of audit for each page in the Webflow editor gives you a accessibility score. So it's really nice for our designers and clients, when they come later and add their own content, they can see, may not know, but they can see accessibility score.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely at the implementation side rather than the platform side. You know, WordPress, all the plugins out there you can get, all the themes out there you can get when you are running on third-party software like that. Even within open source WordPress, you can still find yourself kind of locked away from some of the stuff that's generated on the front end of your site if you're not careful. But at the same time, you being able to control every HTML tag on the front end generated by your WordPress site when you have control over those themes. I think that is also an advantage of WordPress when you need to get really detailed with accessibility and compliance.
You're on
Unmute.
mute.
Okay, so all right, we're on to the quick hitters. So if any of these look good, go ahead and answer them. If not, ignore. That WordPress still being PHP based and still needing jQuery to function. Um, Panels, take any of these you want.
I'll jump on the first one and just say that as I'm not like super at the level of like, man, I love PHP and jQuery for this and this. Like my developer would have many conversations with you about this and is very opinionated about it. I think any stack is going to force you into some certain choices, but I have found that I generally prefer PHP over some of the other window-based systems, so I don't have a problem on that side. It's much more like JavaScript has become so ubiquitous, but jQuery can get really heavy. So I think that's the it doesn't change my decisions. It's just how we use and what we're using on top of the more on the front end side.
Yeah, and you're seeing a big push into headless WordPress, just using the advantages of WordPress as a content management system, and then on the front end being able to get away from its theme architecture and things like that. So yeah, I mean, WordPress has those technology dependencies just because it's been around for so long. But I think there's some real work going on within the platform where you're seeing some headway being made there.
Yeah, I like the term the 99% developer, like PHP and jQuery are everywhere, even though you don't hear about it. It's just the non-sexy term, but most of the web's built on it, so I don't think it hurts to learn it. Um,
Now, anyone think the partnership with OpenAI and Shopify is going to kind of steal away some of the market share from WooCommerce?
I I'll tell you this is one where I'm pretty opinionated. Like I usually don't recommend WooCommerce for getting into very big sites because I found like it has if you're going to run a business off of it and not just sell a couple things here and there, we tend to like guide people to more of a Shopify or some even other CMSs like a BigCommerce or some of those. Um, but I think that AI is trying to, is going to involve a lot of these CMSs and they're trying to build in platforms. I mean, in the state of the word, they just announced a lot of those, um, putting MCP and those types of things. I think that is where you will start seeing some competition is how can you get your content into some of these AIs and these models so that it just like we all competed for Google, now we're all competing in that area to try and get more slice of that response.
yeah, I think it will. I look at the future, and the future is definitely AI, whether we want it or not. And Shopify is heavily investing in AI. Their whole company is required to use it. So I just see them making e-commerce so much easier using AI to get up and running so much quicker that it's going to make it more accessible to more people. And WooCommerce is still like an adding a plugin and takes a little bit of time. Um, I do see Shopify just expand their market there.
Yeah, within e-commerce specifically, a lot of work definitely to be done around AI in that space. But again, kind of exciting to see some of the things that are being built out there for website owners, for agencies and creatives that are leveraging AI tools in the right way.
Okay. Lastly, any predictions for WordPress? Where you think it's going over the next 5 years? Where you think other agencies are going to be? Where you think y'all are going to be? 5-ish years?
Ooh, 5 years.
Five
That's like
years.
let's talk about 5 months, right? I feel like I think 5 years is going to be a different landscape, if I'm being completely honest. I think where vibe coding and low code and some of the and no code has gone, I think it's going to continue pushing. And whether that pushes something like WordPress to expand, I think they've responded over the years to changes in the industry environment. But I would say I think you're probably going to see less CMS in the traditional sense and more people trusting AI to do some of these types of actions that they did before, like, hey, I need to go update this or go write a new blog, and they kind of trusting. I think it's a dangerous world, but I do think it's if I'm a small business owner and I can have my site go and modify things for me so I can actually get back to my business, then that may be a real big win for me. So I think I see more happening in that space where less CMS and less hands in the site, more trying to use natural language to do something on your site. So I think it's going to bring a lot of change, and I think CMSs to me are going to have to adapt where it won't be as much of a manual software process to go and update your site. I think you're going to want to put some of it on, set it and forget it, and some of it to keep optimizing on your behalf too.
Yeah, 5 years, WordPress not going anywhere. There's too much of it. It's impossible. But I do think the way we see the web is it's your AI is going to put the same content everywhere so that your web space is really your place to be uniquely you for someone to come find out what the AI is not going to generically spit about you. It's going to be the place where you shine and be truly human. And the CMSs, WordPress is probably not going anywhere, but there will be a lot newer sites built on newer frameworks, low codes. Yeah, so WordPress forever.
Yeah, I really like that about websites, being the place that kind of shows, shows a business's personality
Oh,
and
wow.
their identity. Um, and certainly WordPress, I think, is well primed to be kind of a place where all your content lives, and that can then be disseminated to all these different platforms, these different methods of consumption. And so, really excited about the potential there and continuing to work in it.
Yeah, I would add one last thing. I think that both of these guys just kind of said is the idea of like, I think as long as WordPress or any of the CMSs start to like prioritize a brand experience for a company, it's going to be a differentiator than just consuming content. And I think that is where we will see adjustments because the move for the longest time has been headless so that you can consume it wherever you want. But I think when all the information's at our fingertips, people now want to have something more deeper, richer. So you can't get a brand experience and get a relationship with a brand through just a chat bot getting my content or something like that. I think it is going to push people to invest in giving something authentic and not just saying, go throw up a website for me and now I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, your website's got to change a little bit. People will just get their information differently. It'll first be through a large language model, probably, and it'll be mostly generic about you. And then when they land on your site, it has to reinforce what they already know, but also give you a little bit of more humanity. So,
Is that it? Thank, all right, panelists, thank y'all so much for joining us. We do have a bit of Q&A. Sorry to keep y'all past time, but if you have to run, fine. But if you want to answer some of these, we can. Just a note, we will email the recording to this on YouTube to everybody when it's done.
shout out to the
Okay.
chat. Chat's been really funny the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, y'all have been keeping the chat going. Okay, so in your experience, how janky has WordPress gotten since the 10/2024 incident? Um, is that the was that the WP Engine drama? Was that the WordCamp US where Matt called out WP Engine?
I was about to
No.
say, I don't feel like it's gotten
Must be.
jankier. It doesn't blip and make me think about it. So that's why I would say it hasn't been probably as, janky. I think, like we said, the one little blip of that, hey, this plugin can't update was a moment, but it was so short lived that I don't think it's led to anything else.
Okay. What CMS has the cleanest code? WP with Elementor has a ton of extra code, Adrian says.
Yeah, we see that a lot with those page builders, that they just kind of create a whole mess of markup on the front end. And so again, being able to build your own theme, build your own blocks, and really optimize for that, I think only serves to make the experience for somebody on the site better, make it easier for all the bots to chew up all the content. And so that's definitely a point of focus for us when we're building sites for clients. So native WordPress
Clean,
and block builder all the way.
Yeah, agree.
the cleanest code is no code.
Yeah, the less you
So
have to add
Webflow,
to a complexity. Yeah.
It's Webflow.
shots fired. Okay, this for Nick. Webflow questions: learning curve, how big is market penetration, open source, uh, is it native development, or are Webflow page builders?
Yeah, learning curve, I would say not that steep. It's sort of like a Photoshop interface where you drag and drop CSS properties all on a panel, components on your left. You kind of bring them in and you can set up sort of your, if you're using Tailwind, all your variables and stuff like that. The market penetration is increasing. I know that. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I can get you that. It's not open source. It's hosted on their own. Uh, there is a big marketplace of plugins and add-ons and stuff. Um, it's not native development, so you don't have access to the code. It's more of like a page builder style with code injected on pages in jQuery.
Okay, next one. I built my own website with WordPress and questioned the annual expense. I'm now considering adding calendar booking and payment for my newly created LLC. Would you recommend staying with WordPress?
I mean, I would say like I've done quite a few websites with booking and payment functionality on WordPress, and I find that it's actually better than trying to hack through and bolt on situations sometimes from other vendors. I mean, Squarespace does have a pretty easy booking system built into it that they've cultivated, but then you got to deal with building your site on Squarespace too, which can bring its own problems. I would say I don't think you're in the wrong place, but if you're going to do business on it, then I don't think it's bad to have an investment in your website for it, you know. And Gravity Forms is such a popular form plugin, and they've got a lot in the booking and other space. So I always say like it's a good choice for that option.
Another Webflow one. Does it have SEO utilities equivalent to Yoast and Schema plugins?
Yeah, it does. It's all built in standard. It's not a plugin. It also has AI to help you auto generate all the metadata and even now the schema that's more important for AIO or the AI optimization. Yeah, it's a first party citizen.
Um, have any of you used WordPress as a headless CMS? What do you think of decoupled architecture going into the future? Good question.
I haven't had
Yeah,
a
we
chance to
have.
build with it in production yet, but certainly been working around it a lot and kind of figuring out some of the advantages it has. Like we were kind of talking about with all the pushes around AI, I think it's just going to keep getting more and more, more and more prevalent and more necessary.
We've done a couple headless. I don't recommend it unless you really need it. Unless you're really omni-channel, you have other channels. If you're just trying to get, if you're just trying to do the new thing, it's not worth it. It's more complexity, two servers, different code bases. So
Yeah, I was gonna add like to me, the only big case to say why you should be headless is if you do have a mobile like app and you're trying to feed a lot of your content and have some shared content storage and that kind of thing. Like that's really the only time I've found it be helpful. But if you're running a native app, you're already managing separate code bases and separate things like that. But it really comes down to is your content easy to access for both devices or something like that. But it's a lot more complexity. The only other thing that I've seen really be headless can be fast. Like it can be really fast and,
yeah.
and can take some of your security vector out. But like, again, if you're going that far to get that, like you've probably got the infrastructure to support it.
Okay, there's some multiple questions. Any concern with Cloudflare? I know some recent outages and WP engines built on Cloudflare. Any concerns there?
I
No.
always make the joke if Cloudflare goes down, everybody's almost down at that point. It's like
Yeah.
if Amazon goes down, just about everybody's out. So yeah, I think there is a risk when we've put a lot of trust in some of these big guys, but like then again, everybody is out. So you're guilty by association at some point. I actually will say though, I've appreciated some of the stuff I've seen Cloudflare doing, especially in the space of AI and trying to protect content creators, content, and some of those types of things, as well as security. I feel like they have stepped out to try and protect a lot of websites at the edge as opposed to trying to, do it somewhere else. So I'm a fan in general of Cloudflare, but again, when anybody becomes so big, you're gonna risk it.
Yeah, same. I really like them, and the benefits outweigh a couple of the hiccups. And what Daniel was saying about how they are for content creators who LLMs use their content to learn. They're working on the system for artists to get paid if an LLM starts crawling their site. It's just they seem to be a company focused in the right direction.
Yeah, they're finally starting to claiming to start to close the gap between like what they make available for free and what's at their enterprise level. So that's really excited to see some pushes in that space too.
Okay, looking for, so if you were looking to develop and launch a site, templated site, what platform is your go-to when looking at lower cost, quick turnaround?
Webflow 100%. It's pretty quick. Just kind of it's a drag and drop builder, but better than what you get on the WordPress side. Much better.
For us, it's just, it depends. I mean, we obviously have a team of people ready to get sites up quickly within WordPress. You kind of got to look at it project by project. If there's heavy need for that project to have, integrations, or the client specifically is experiencing one versus the other, a lot of those things just have necessary influence on where you put the site.
Yeah, I mean, my quick statement is like, I would lean, if you're a small business owner and you're trying to make a quick website for your restaurant or something, small, I would say if you're not working with an agency, make sure it's something you trust and you can understand, because when it breaks, you've got no one else to call but you. So I'd say Webflow is easier in that respect, but I find actually I recommend to a lot of people to start looking at some of the, Squarespace, or even, Wix has done a lot of job, but Framer, some of these have made it a little bit easier to lower the entry to barrier for a true small business, or like a solo entrepreneur kind of thing. But if you're really trying to make money, I would say, work with someone who can help you get started, work with an agency who can get you on the right platform, and someone you can trust to keep working with you.
Okay, thoughts on Duda and more specifically its ability to optimize for LLMs?
I don't have a whole
I'm
lot of
not
experience.
sure.
I've heard of it and looked at it, but I've never touched it or done anything on it. So
And
Same.
Okay. Are there any other viable CMS that are FLOSS like WP Engine? Have Joomla or Drupal been maintained?
they definitely haven't been. I feel like they're way, they're kind of stuck a little bit. Some maintained, but like, I haven't seen anything come close to those platforms, like WordPress and Webflow and some of those. Shopify, I would say, is like, even though it's an e-commerce first platform, I've seen even people running sites on that. It's grown so much. So I'd say there's been more investment in those three than I think all the other ones. You start to look at market penetration and share, and they go from, I think Webflow's at like 6%, and is still a big player. And then after that, you're getting like 0.5% of market penetration on these other CMSs. So I don't think anybody else has staying power compared to those platforms.
Okay.
WordPress is the only one in there. Yeah.
Question from Mark. So, your opinion on of WordPress with a page builder like Elementor as an agency owner is keeping everything consistent so all of our designers can jump on any project and perform efficiently. Elementor's made it so we can remove unused tools and we can use very select plugins with performance and speed in mind. So would you recommend he stay on Elementor, or is there something else he can do to kind of bring uniformity to site builds other than Elementor?
think it depends on the team and capabilities you have, within the agency. If it's more designer, less developer, I think something like Elementor can get you a good way. But then you start walking into that context, that scenario where it is kind of the Wild West in terms of what can show up on the site, what your content managers can do. So it's a balance between those situations. If you can have a very flexible block based theme that then your team can go into WordPress and manage that way, that's again for us, that's the preference.
Yeah, if it's working for you, a big part of what I decide is kind of the right solution is the one that you know well. So if you don't have a problem and your clients aren't uh, having a hard time editing content, I would continue on. I think.
I think what is dangerous in the agency world is like the shiny thing of
Yeah.
well, let me go from Elementor to now testing Divi to testing this to testing that to like, bouncing around, because I think ultimately you lose the efficiency of everybody understands, has the same shared language, that, your repeatability becomes real big value in that. But I would say as long as you're checking your other boxes, are you doing good SEO? Are you keeping accessibility top of mind? I think uh, my biggest complaint with any of the block builders is portability to take over from another site or move it somewhere else to like another agency or something like that. But if you're trying to just good by you, do what works, but make sure you're doing the other things well.
Okay, I think last one. Does anyone have a recommended events calendar plugin that's not the events
The events
calendar because
calendar.
they do not like it?
Yeah.
No, that's the one we use.
I mean, if there's a way we don't have to use it, we try not to use it. I hate to say it, but if it's like sometimes it is the best fit because it has the things you need and you can get it out of the box. But the other ones just haven't been updated as much. So I always say like but depending on your need, like ACF can do a lot of the same things if you're just trying to have an event and give people some metadata around the event, but it does fill a lot of needs when you're getting into it. It's just styling it and it's just a beast.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. If you can, kind of roll up a custom post type that can handle it, hold all the data you need, and maybe ideally your registrations and things are offsite or external. But yeah, we've had success with the events calendar despite other opinions. But yeah, again, sometimes it's too much and not relevant to a small section of what that project might need.
Yeah, it's a beast. Two that you can check out, anonymous question person, simple calendar and event on are two that I've
Mhm.
heard good things about. But yeah,
Worked with Simple
there's
Calendar
a
before
there's
too.
a void in the event calendar plugin uh world.
I mean, what they have done though, if you're the type of business that needs ticketing, I'd say like that's just usually we always say like, yeah, you're gonna want to use that because they've handled that so well. If you're not gonna manage ticketing through some other way, then but that sometimes these plugin guys, I'd say they put in a lot of work. So I mean, but they sometimes answer all the things and it does a lot.
Yeah, it's a beast, but it can do a lot. Um, and unless there's any other Q&As you'll want to get to, Daniel, Tucker, and Nick, thank y'all so much for joining us. This was great. I know I said this to you all privately, but I'll say it on the webinar. I've been developing WordPress sites for over 10 years, and this right now is the least optimistic I am on WordPress going forward. So hearing from some of y'all and that, some of the concerns and issues are a bit overblown. WordPress, it makes up so much of the active web right now. It's not going anywhere. and it does have a great community around it that I think can keep it going, even if you don't agree with everything leadership is doing. But again, and thank you to all the attendees that are still here. I know we're 25 minutes over a time. Again, thank you, panelists, for staying on with us. Uh, but if you want to get in touch with any of our panelists, are y'all on LinkedIn or Twitter? Any socials y'all want to shout out?
Yeah, we
Not
can send it
yeah,
in the chat, but yeah,
I'm not active on there.
Okay.
LinkedIn works, and
Yeah.
happy to continue the conversation if anyone needs any
Flow questions.
consulting. Yeah, Webflow, bring it on. WordPress,
Yeah.
bring it on too. I'm 15 years WordPress, so still still love it. Still my baby.
Definitely. Thanks for having us, Michael.
Yeah, thanks.
So
It's
Tucker,
great.
thank you
Great
so
questions
much.
too.
Oh, thanks. And it's and everybody, thank you for putting up with your host is not used to doing this. So no, the panelists made it easy though. But again, everybody, good evening, have a good night, and thank y'all so much for coming again.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Good night.